Well, here's the deal. I come back. I bring my family back to Carbondale regularly because my family is here. My parents, my sister, my nieces, my aunts, uncles.
The whole wild
The
clan.
whole Wild and Palmer. That's my mother's side. Everybody is here. And
Are you related to Rory?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm not.
Do you get that question from time to time?
Never.
Okay,
That's
fair enough.
First time for Rory. But I mentioned to you before we began that I have a little bit of first, I don't think there's anything wrong with being connected to your family. I have I grew up with close familial relationships, and so I love the town for that reason. And so as I came back through, visiting once again home, I moved away from Carbondale in 2006, so being away for 15 years now. Some of the nostalgia, like I'm no longer viewing the town through those lenses. And one of the frustrating things that I see through Carbondale is the number of homes that have fallen into disrepair. And a lot of them you can tell are rentals. And so obviously there's a non-altruistic part of this where I just want to make money, right? That's my goal for renovating houses. But a big part of it as well is like I could do that a lot of places that are closer, that are not 1,200 miles away.
Yeah.
But I love Carbondale, and I think a big part of what makes Carbondale great or not so great, and you can see this on the WTF Carbondale Facebook page and in other places, are the quality of housing for people that are students and for non-students as well, and the way that the folks that are running the housing treat people and treat their properties, and they become an asset to them that is not a real thing.
Yeah.
And so when I drive down a street and I see a house falling in on itself, there's someone that owns that's not taking care of it, that is making Carbondale, frankly, kind of look like shit.
Yeah.
And I want Carbondale to be what it was to me honestly, I've loved this town forever. So, up till this point, almost like the 38 years of my life before I started going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So the part of the drive of this, part A is, I'd like to make some money and not be a math teacher until I'm 65. But the other part of that is let's invest in Carbondale so Carbondale can be for my nieces and the kids that I work with at Carbondale High School, the kids that Eric Berry works with at Carbondale High School, so they can love Carbondale as much as I do and have for so long and have a look back on it not as a dying town, but as a town that people love enough to put money and time and effort into to make it as wonderful as I know that it is.
I love how you've spoken all of that directly to the camera. I will throw out, usually we do like the news interview format, so throwing that out there as we move forward into...
Do you prefer then off camera focus?
Yeah. So we're just talking back and forth here for episode 72 of the WTF Carbondale podcast, the sweatiest episode of the WTF Carbondale podcast yet, because I've just spent the past 45 minutes reconfiguring the studio for a special podcast, grabbing Jason Wild just before he wilds out of Carbondale one more time.
I gotta cut Nathan off real quick.
Cut me off.
I am going to talk to the camera now because this is not for Nathan. So I texted Nathan to tell him I was here. And then, and I was waiting outside, and I finally was like, "What the hell's going on?" So I look inside the window, and I see Nathan come out of a room, shirtless, putting a shirt on, and I was like, "What the hell's happening?" So I actually immediately turned the other direction because I don't want to make him uncomfortable because I don't know what happens when no one's here and there are just cameras on a stage. What? Nathan's OnlyFans? I don't know. But then we get in here, and I see that I'm really cool on stage. You've set me up in a wonderful place, Nathan. But up there, I imagine the heat is gravitating toward you have a massive light 3 feet away from your face. So I'm now less comfortable about what happened in this chair 5 minutes before I sat in it. So for everyone at home that wants to know how the sausage is made, sometimes it's made shirtless. That's you didn't know that I caught you shirtless.
No, I absolutely knew. I knew I was coming around that corner.
Okay, good.
Trying to be like, can I get this sweat off my shirt before the podcast? And the answer is clearly no. Again, for episode 72 of the WTF Carbondale podcast, where we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives, tied all back to this little old place we call home, Carbondale, Illinois, and somebody who has called Carbondale home for quite a bit of their life and loves it so much, as we just heard Jason Wild. Thanks, man. This is... So I've got sounding board discussion to have with you on everything from
the creative
function to the reinvestment function. Like I just love that was kind of the lead off here, right? And I don't know. So you're townie like me, having grown up here. Is there any part of the enterprising activity that you're getting into now that you feel like just a little bit of it shook off the tree from Lloyd Wild?
Well, Wild Motors, my dad's business, and I know people have varying feelings, but the reality is, Dad has been fixing people's cars for almost nothing for like 50 years, right?
Yeah.
Like he was working there as a preteen. His dad had him working at an almost nothing wage.
So it's a generational
It is
outfit.
generational, man. My grandpa Jim Wild was a salesman there for a long time, and so there's been a Wild business in Carbondale for a really long time, and I know my dad's reaching like the twilight of his career.
Uh-huh.
He's kind of ready to go. It's more his clubhouse now than his business.
Yeah,
and he just kind of makes himself feel good by helping people out, and sometimes offends people because, when you get old, you're kind of overly honest and an asshole sometimes. So, I don't think my dad would be surprised to hear me say that. But also, he hooks people up. For a fraction of other people's prices. So I love to have my name stamped on a business that I hope to be here for many years because I want to continue that Wild family legacy of being a part of this town and being a face that someone recognizes when they're out and about. So,
that's good. That is whether you are physically here or here in spirit, you're gonna be here one way or the other.
Yeah, man.
And put it on paper.
And if I own houses here, it's really hard for my wife to say no about me coming back, and she doesn't. She's totally supportive of this venture because my partner is Eric Berry.
Yeah.
And you know Eric fairly well. He's a
Mr.
really good
Berry
dude.
to me as he is to many people, but Eric Berry just acceptable for. We'll get used to it. Us kids will get used to it over time.
Well, and he's a little older as well and set in his ways. Very smart guy, but he also is a kind of a brutally honest dude as well. And sometimes that honesty is maybe his opinion and not reality. But I love him dearly, and he really a lot of the things that are great in my life from a performance standpoint came because Eric Berry saw in me something that Tom George was here before him and was a really great theater teacher. I just don't think saw. And so Eric cultured a lot of things that, I know I would have gone on to do comedy stuff because that's always been who I am.
Yeah.
Because, social anxiety makes you want to lighten the situation, and I happen to be good at doing it that way. But also Eric was like, let's cultivate this. And he happened to start working in the high school. He was 24 years old and I was 17. So as a 40-year-old, those are basically the same age.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, man, he's my wife, who is a very fiscally conservative individual. She likes, saving and protecting money. Trust it because say what you will about Eric, and I'm sure people, like anybody, has a variety of opinions about him. But he is also really intelligent when it comes to a lot of those things. So.
Yeah.
He was just a no nonsense, there was no hesitation on making him a business because also he's become one of my closest friends, and we definitely butt heads.
Yeah.
And we definitely have already in our little business venture.
Oh my
God. oh yeah, dude. Yes, a variety of times. But he's also just one of my best friends. When I come to town, his house is my house, and that level of generosity for somebody like me who is kind of gross and stinky to let me in his house to be me kind of speaks to what a good dude he is. So
that's the truth.
Yeah,
that's the truth. I don't think there's anybody that could argue that one. And I mean, it just it's a.
You're just looking at me like if he lets that guy
dude
have free reign of his house, he's got to be a good dude.
There's a whole Barry legacy in this town, right? Tied directly to performance that without him in place doing what he's done. There just wouldn't be as rich of character of some folks in town that have gone from being just high school kids under his tutelage to grown adults producing and contributing to the community.
That is a true story.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think we were dive down the.
Sorry, man. I didn't mean to. I hope I'm not
the bro love for Barry.
Yeah. Well, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to not give him the props that I feel like he deserves.
Yeah.
Just from being here and having this ability to meet with you, that kind of flows out of I wouldn't know you.
They were one for Barry.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, things like that, those connections happen. And that speaks to the greater beauty of Carbondale that I live in a very big city, and it's nice to have some anonymity, but it's really cool here to have like 3 degrees of separation from every human for a dozen different reasons. And you and I have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, you were just talking about, cousin Justin kicking down trailer doors when
Yes,
you guys
yeah.
were kids and that whole shebang. And I just love it, right? You're fully familiar. You're another one of the folks of a generation of people, 2 or 3 generations that have sat around the dinner table with Clyde and Donna in the house on Hunt Street. That it's really
Absolutely.
like it feels like there is a certain center of power about where I get to exist, right? And while I fight back against memories that are not as positive as other folks may expect to be, like I'm still living in a physical place where I can go back and feel like I'm repairing through all of these things over the course of time, and then building on to the next generation and sending them out the door of that little old house on Hunt Road that Grandpa built with his bare hands in the 60s. It's just like it all has like a real nice warm and fuzzy feel, on the inside of kind of what's a harder, cold, like outer shell.
Which is life, right? You just like, there's like, if you can like chip through that shitty outer core, there's always, and maybe this is just me, but I really hold on to, relationships and feelings about certain things. And so, really grasping at those things in maybe kind of a toxic way allows you to go past some of that stuff. Because certainly for me either, not everything about Carbondale or family and stuff like that is rosy, but I don't know. And maybe also for me, a little distance. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, perhaps, as part of that. But I totally get where you're coming from.
So what were your early days out of high school like? Did you go from acting, participating in performance in high school to continuing to perform and do activity once you left high school, or was it something that like you came back into, mid-20s, early 30s, wherever you may have been?
No, like my trajectory, once I hit high school and did speech and theater and like had, for Carbondale, great success. You know what I mean? Like I was not getting calls from anybody to recruit me for anything, right?
No,
but I had really great success from a personal standpoint, like coming out of my shell and being at the center of things and successfully completing tasks. Like that wasn't really my MO. And I was a good student when I was younger, but high school was a little bit challenging for me in realizing that I didn't like being a good student. Mm-hmm. And the real honest reality is, without speech and theater, I probably would have dropped out and just done rebound.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's a great course for some folks. But that ability to come do that was great. And so when I left, I did spend some time, participating in activities that may have involved substances and a lot of not paying my bills and just like general, shit. I don't know. I don't know how to describe.
Yeah.
I was not doing meth or anything. But
you're just hanging around.
But
man.
I was definitely fucking around and drinking way too much, and there was a significant amount of marijuana involved, and like really going like, because I was a really good kid all the way up until like late junior year of high school, and then I was like, I'm gonna rebel a little bit, and I rebelled pretty hard. But then I also I took one semester off of school, and I was like, I don't have a direction.
Yeah.
And I missed that direction that theater and speech provided me. So I went to John A. Logan in the spring of 2001. I started there, and I took a couple classes with someone who I think doesn't get nearly enough credit for his contributions to the area, Mike Siegel, who at the time was the director of the theater department there. And Mike gave me a number of really great opportunities. And I met a really wonderful system of people, group of people that I was able to work with there doing stuff. And so I stayed at John A. Logan for 6 years. Most people that go to college for 6 years don't walk away with an associate's degree. But I was able to do a lot of stuff in the theater program. I was able to do that with tuition waivers through doing performance stuff and working in the theater. And, that created a great trade for me because I didn't walk away with a ton of student loans. And for that 5 or 6 years that I was there, doing a bunch of other classes but retaking every single semester, either Mike's acting 1 or acting 2 class, I got to hone my craft and also like move away from comedy and go to, I'm going to do Chekhov. And I'm going to come over to SIU and try Shakespeare. And I'm going to have an opportunity to work with Steve Falcone on work that he's written or work that he's, found folks that are adapting things. Steve Falcone did some really amazing stuff where he would find adapted works that no one else anywhere was doing and bring down and give me opportunities. I really benefited from just so many amazing folks creating opportunities that I happened to at Johnny Logan take advantage of.
So how did you and Steve first connect? Was he like teaching
Falcone?
somewhere?
Yeah. So I showed up one spring day in 2001 wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and I had a big beard. And I walked into Mike Siegel's. I was taking a directing class at that time. I wasn't even an acting class at that moment. It was a directing class. And I walked in, and longtime local legend Pat Benton. You know Pat Benton?
Yeah, from the radio.
Yeah,
right?
His daughter Sam Benton was in this class, and Holly. I'm blanking on Holly's last name, and Angie Donosky, Angie Boswell were in that class, and they are automatically like, you look like a young Steve Falcone. You're young Steve Falcone. And at the time I was pissed because like, no, I'm a young Jason Wilde. You can't compare me to anybody else. But later on I got to meet Steve and work with him. I couldn't tell you what the first show I did with him was, but and actually it may have been I took an English class with him first. And I actually have an English degree now. And part of that is probably because A, my theater stuff didn't transfer when I moved to Utah, and B, because Steve Falcone also fostered some writing skills and abilities that I don't think I really realized I had, and taught me how to put word on the page. And now I'll never do so as gracefully as he does, or his son Ben, but he allowed me to access some skills I didn't have, and we connected too. He is a loud, bearded guy that enjoys his alcohol a little bit, and I was also a loud, bearded guy that happens to enjoy a little bit of booze, and he had to put me in my place a couple times and let me know I'm not I don't have as much clout as I think I did, and that was probably good for me.
Yeah.
Because a guy from Philly cracking into you, telling you to shut up.
What is that accent like? I like that Philadelphia.
Hey, Wild, shut up, Marks. And it's like, all right, shit. Well, he looks like he might be raising from the middle seat in the auditorium. I should go before he comes to me, because he looks like a man who, even in his 50s or 60s, could hurt me. So
yeah.
Yeah, so that was my Johnny Logan journey. That may have been a really long answer to your question about continuing to perform, but that really, honestly, the last straight player musical I did was Steve Falcone. It was Man Woman Cafe Table, a show he'd written, and I got to play the waiter, the kind of the through line for the piece. And I had been casting noises off at SIU at the time as well, and I actually dropped that show. I told them I was taking a different part. And I was talking to somebody about this recently who did that show that I was going to do it with, and I don't carry regret, because working with Steve is such a special thing, and working on an original piece of his and getting to like work with a writer to make something come to life. And so those shows were the last straight plays I did. Since then, the only things I've done are stand-up and improv. And so, I look back on those times really fondly, because once I started a family, doing 6 weeks of rehearsals isn't feasible. And so, really, Southern Illinois, you got the best of me. and then I moved on to doing a lot of improv and comedy out of state.
So did you pick up the teaching kind of line in your career when you moved to Utah, or was it something you were already kind of pursuing out of here and then kept going? Do you want the beautiful answer I give to people interviewing me, or do you want? Nah, give me the gross part that okay. So you don't feel comfortable in sharing.
Here's the honest answer. I couldn't get my none of my theater stuff would transfer. I was not doing 4 more years of theater at University of Utah, so I got an English degree. I needed a job. I worked as a shipping clerk for a little bit. I hated it. I got a job as a waiter. I hated it. Then I found on Craigslist an ad for a job at the Jewish Community Center, helping in their after-school program. I took that job. They really liked me. I ended up working and helping run their summer camp program, one of the biggest summer camps in all of Utah. and I ended up being one of the helping manage that. I was what was called a unit head, and I was like 3 spots under the main man, and we ran the whole camp, and it was a really phenomenal thing. And I made friends with a lot of folks who were working with the kids because they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I think all people are great. I love I'm like compulsively social.
Yeah.
I like to be, and I have a high social anxiety, but I also really get a lot out of interacting with people. It's fun to talk to
Well, it's
people.
like it's riding the wave, man.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
Yeah. And so, I dig kids as much as anybody else in like a totally healthy way.
Clarification.
I had a friend tell me, she said, I worked with her in the program for a long time, Kristen Bunk, and she said, hey, I interviewed at a school in Kearns, which is a tougher part of the Salt Lake metro area. And she said, they're really desperate for teachers. You should call and ask about a job. I called. I didn't have a teaching degree at this point even.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished my bachelor's degree in English. And I called and said, hey, I hear you might have a need for teachers. I'm looking at the alternative route to licensure program here in Utah. I would love to maybe see about interviewing. And they said, we're actually conducting interviews today for a 5th grade position. Would you like to do a phone interview? And I said, yeah. And I'm calling from the office of the JCC. And so I was like, Jared, can I go in your office for this phone call? He said, yeah. So I go in and I did a phone interview, and they said, we really like you. We want you to come in. I went in and interviewed, and they hired me on the spot and just said, get your paperwork together. It took me, because I'm a little bit of a slacker sometimes, procrastinator, until October of that school year to get my paperwork together. So I worked as a substitute with my own class for 2.5 months, and then I got hired in Granite School District, which is one of the top 50 largest school districts in the nation. I just fell kind of backwards into this job. I worked there for, I worked in Granite for, I don't know, maybe close to 10 years as a 5th grade teacher, and I spent a year as a principal, and then I moved over to another district. I guess I worked there for 12 years because I'm 13 years a teacher now, and it was never something that was on my plan. It was never on the program, but it was a good job, and I'm good at. This sounds really arrogant. I've had really good success with relationships with families and test scores, which is they're all about metrics in Utah, and I've had a good successes there. And I do enjoy working with kids and joking with kids, and any teacher will tell you it's performance.
Yeah.
Like, I am on stage all day long,
and
12-year-olds laugh at dumber jokes. So it's a very easy. It's in that sense, it's an easy job. So that was the road I took to teaching. It was never part of the plan, and really, I don't think I want it to be the rest of my life. But it's been really such a wonderful, rewarding, valuable part of my life to this point.
Well, and I love that you touched on the performative aspect of pedagogy. Right, it's something I've talked about a little bit on the podcast and some other episodes, and it is a component that some people just miss in this, and just don't quite understand that if you really want to convey knowledge to folks, that it is about putting on the show, right? A really good conversation just a handful of podcasts ago was John Davey, School of Architecture, Bucky Dome, all that fun stuff. He talked about dressing up for all sorts of roles throughout history and coming in and teaching those particular types of architectures dressed as a person from ancient Rome, or somebody that would have built a castle in feudal Britain, or whatever, I don't know, Britain in the UK, whatever you'd call it at that point in time. And it's a draw. On top of that, I imagine that just having actual personal experiences that you could contextualize to the relationship with students was probably helpful in achieving outcomes on the other side of the education.
Yeah, well, yes, and I grew up on what end? I'm so terrible at directions.
So that's north.
I grew up on the
south.
north end of North Carrico Street,
okay.
And it was really kind of a poor area. And my family, my mom and I were talking about this recently. There were several years where our tax, that we were filing for $10,000 a year. I grew up below the poverty level, and so when I moved to Kearns, that was a big part of it. It's just that relatable. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're in Carbondale or you're in, a city of several million people. Being poor is being poor, and relating on those personal levels. And it's not just being poor. You know what I mean? Like, any level you can find to connect with somebody, but understanding that and really accessing for those points. You're absolutely right. Is like it's relationships, right?
Yep.
And that's how you build them, is through common experience.
Yep. That's it. And this
Great thoughts, man.
It's really kind of, again, the core of this project, right? What is that common thread throughout all of our lives tied to this place, whether you're new here and have been here a couple months, whether you are generational, have been here forever through lineage, whether you are from here, have left here, come back here, the Carbondale shuffle.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the Carbondale hokey pokey. I don't know. You put your left foot in, you put your left foot out as I actuate my right foot.
Dude,
instead.
it happens for sure. Or you just put your left foot in and then you get stuck.
Yeah. You're like, I can't get out.
I'm going to get a master's degree and then work at a restaurant forever because I love the town.
Yeah.
And even though there's no jobs, I'll stay because I love it.
Yep. It's a very real thing. It's a very real thing. And it's one of the toughest parts about, attracting folks and keeping folks. And that leads into kind of another conversation, because you're the right kind of person to discuss this Creatordale idea.
I don't know about that, but I'm happy to discuss.
Oh yeah. Well, you're gonna get it anyway. So this idea that I've got in my mind is getting a bunch of creators just in Carbondale, just creating, right? Videos, photos, spoken word, podcast, whatever, live performances, yada yada yada. 100 people in place in and around Carbondale, doing their own thing. Car guys do car stuff. Theater folks do theater stuff.
I love it.
Musicians do musicians. Sports people do sports stuff. Everybody does their own vertical. And then they all, by virtue of living in the same place, interact.
Have the horizontal as well.
Exactly.
That's really cool, man. I love it.
And then you have folks just build off of each other's audiences. And then it becomes this one, people are all about reality TV. Well, give them the reality of Carbondale through the lens of everybody living and creating in space here.
Okay, so here's the cool thing, dude. This is what I'm doing right now with Eric. Is I had this idea, and I didn't think he'd like it, but he's way on board. Is that one of the things I love about Carbondale, and I've experienced this my whole life, is everybody is a character.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I think everywhere that's a little bit true, but in Carbondale,
It's
the people's collective,
true.
it really is. And so my thing was like, I'm gonna film all of the stuff we're doing on these houses and all of these people that we're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got GoPros that may or may not even be functional in corners of rooms. I've got iPhones on time lapse and iPhones taking footage and then talking to, like, we've got a guy, I don't even know Billy's last name, but he's like this 45-year-old wonderkind who he does electrical and he does HVAC. He knows everything. He's just never been in the right place to capitalize. And then on top of that, he's very funny. Yeah. Like the first day he showed up, I came to town and he's working on something at Eric's house, and he walked in the door and said, boy, you look soft and pretty. And I was like, what is, I don't know you, man. Woo-hoo. I don't know you, and I don't know that I like you. But then he and I have worked together, and that was all from not even like this, sophomoric place of, I'm making fun of, homosexuality or anything like that. It was just like his level of camaraderie is being weird like that with me, and it's like Billy is a character, and Fiddle Rick of what is it, Maxwell Silver Hammer or whatever. I've been working with him a lot, and he's so wonderfully knowledgeable, but also like you've got a guy coming to do electrical in these beautiful flowing scarves and a fedora and stuff, and you're like, what is happening right? What planet am I on? So we've been filming all this stuff, and it is kind of like this. Let's put it on YouTube and show Carbondale is this place where, it's like Portland, but in the Midwest. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Well, here's the deal, right? This happens at all different levels, right? You had expressed it about I'm not the young Steve Falcone, I'm the young Jason Wilde, right? It's the same concept in place here in Carbondale. We try and find these one-off comparisons, a Portland, Oregon, and Austin, Texas, a Salt Lake City or a Provo or whatever, any of these places, wherever the hell Curtis is at in Idaho. Yeah, take your pick. The reality is, we're the only Carbondale. There's just no other way to describe it.
There really isn't. Yeah, there really is not. We went to Tres Hombres on Monday night. And
with Barry?
Yeah, really, right, exactly. And it was somebody's birthday, and it became this wild time, and is it
because you were there?
People are being safe and having a good time, but also like interacting. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't pods of people. It was we're all in the same space. Yeah. There's a synergy to this town. I feel like that, and maybe I'm just really romanticizing the college parties I went to.
I don't think you are though, right? And here's why. Because there is a intergenerational component to it. There is a multiracial component to it.
Absolutely.
There is a multi-theist component to it. There is a vice component to it. There is anything that underpins what makes humans human is
Convergent.
essentially, yeah, just
What is Carbondale's new slogan?
Always open, buddy.
So stupid, but that logo of like all the things crossing, that's what you're talking about, and that is accurate.
Yeah.
I hate complimenting that
poorly
at all, but
phrased.
that part, yes. So fucking dumb. Sorry. They paid $100,000 for some fucking stupid bullshit.
Hold on.
record.
Let me break it down real quick.
Please do.
They paid $5,000 for the logo. They paid $66,000 for the overall
Branding.
the overall program that was the assessment, the survey, the produced document on the other end, all of those actual components, the actionable functions of it, and they had another $30-ish thousand in physical deliverables, everything from digital branding components to the
bike rack
racks.
things. Oh, yeah. The non-functional. Yeah. Okay, I do appreciate you breaking that down because I work with like the world's best graphic designer in Salt Lake City. I'm sure there's great ones here too. Actually, Courtney Smith, old 710 bookstore graphic designer, Attitude Designs, but a great graphic designer. And I was like, dude, they just paid $100,000 for this, and he had a good laugh. But so it's good to know that there's more to it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to tear down because doing those things is hard.
Yeah.
I actually work with a municipal council in Salt Lake City that nobody's ever happy, and it's easy for me to laugh from afar. So city folk watching this who really love your Xbox logo, please know that I appreciate your efforts.
Well, what's nice is things are always malleable. I tried. I mean, I went up in front of council 2017-ish. I've got the video. I've got the supercut private on my YouTube channel right now. It exists. Where I just went in and I was like, please don't screw this up. That's what I did. I stood at that dais and I said, please. And, I've just kind of taken certain components into my own hands from my own perspective, right? What's really nice about the WTF Carbondale project is that it doesn't have the same constraints that any sort of institutional activity has to have on it. Yeah. I just flip a switch and that's that. Whereas something that like right now, the next institutional activity that's out there is called Southern Illinois Now, right? It's a collection of larger institutions throughout a 14, 17 county region, give or take.
It's a lot of red tape.
Yeah. You go right to their Facebook page and the first thing that it is 8 paragraphs of legalese that dictate how the community
because people
functions.
are going to read that,
and that's a really difficult way to actually build an earnest community that people can go into and then validate by thinking that the interactions they see occurring are real organic interactions among the people of a place. And that's what really, for all the positives and all of the negatives that are, components to the WTF Carbondale project, that ultimately it is a honest look at all types of people, all different kinds of folks that exist in Carbondale, and very few places in this town, both physical and digital, can you find that
an intersection, a cross section,
get all of these people in the same room together.
Well, look, I'm going to tell you this, and I'll be totally frank. On a personal level, you and I don't really know each other.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I don't even know that we're friends on Facebook. Honestly,
we are friends on Facebook.
We are. Okay.
We've only actually met maybe 3 or 4 times in person. They've all been for like improv stuff having to do with Barry's class, which is why like this was a really good fit for an exploratory conversation.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you my experience watching you digitally, and I watched your mayoral campaign.
Yeah.
And supported it.
Thanks, buddy.
In the sense that I supported your drive and desire to improve upon this town.
Yeah.
I've watched you moderate that WTF Carbondale Facebook page in a firm and fair way.
Yeah.
I've watched you create opportunities for interaction in a good way, and I think I don't know your personal politics very well, although I can assume them.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of your
assumable.
personal. Yeah, I don't know a lot of your personal motivations, but I do know that I think you've been very forthright in a lot of the things you think, from my experience. And Carbondale needs people who love Carbondale and don't just have aspirations to do things politically. Mm-hmm. Carbondale needs someone like you who is driven, because every time I see you, you're working on something.
Yeah. But no, and that's, I think that's a good point to make, is just you've got to, what makes a resilient community is a community with folks that aren't just looking out for themselves, but they're looking out for, the collection of folks that exist in a physical place as a whole, because, it as cliche as it sounds, right? It's a rising tide lifts all ships,
dude. That
kind of deal.
Their cliches are a cliche for a reason.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you too. Circle all the way back to my recent business endeavors. The folks who are not helping raise the tide are folks that we could categorize as slumlords in the community.
Yeah.
People not taking care of Carbondale's residents, making money off their backs and not reinvesting into their properties.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, and it has become more apparent and more prevalent than it has ever been in, just the past 14 months of the pandemic, right? The capacity for folks to let their properties continue to degrade while, being under a limited watchful eye. Now,
while people are living in them.
Do what?
While people are living in them.
Yeah, while people are living in them, which is the most painful thought of all of this, right? That like people are just kind of, whether they are themselves trapped in it, whether they just are mentally trapped in it, right? Whether they are financially trapped in a situation, in a particular housing space, and just how that affects all of the other components of their lives. There was a person who I interacted with a couple weeks ago through the group, and I will say, John Lanzini, episode I think like 35 of the WTF Carbondale podcast, is the new community development director. He's kind of he was building neighborhood services, now he's over the whole shebang. There are no more earnest people on the face of this planet than John Lanzini, and that man will get out there and care about people in place where they need him to do so. He just this one example of this woman that he interacted with, getting code enforcement into their property, getting the appropriate paperwork in place to address the shortcomings of the property, and then giving them the ability to leverage the work of the city to ultimately get themselves out of a less than favorable housing situation, which is how it's supposed to work, right?
That's awesome.
I see, I concern, I report. That report leads to action. That action allows me the ability to make the changes in my life that need to be made to better stabilize my life as a whole. And that's the kind of deliverable service that a city is supposed to provide. Absolutely. To just an everyday resident, right there. We always talk about, well, how does Carbondale treat its businesses, or what's the relationship like between the university and the city? But we miss that important component of how is the city just working with the person who is most vulnerable, and starting from there and working our way up, as opposed to starting up here with a champagne bottle and trying to.
Municipal positions are supposed to be positions of service.
Yeah.
Right? And so you have to ask yourself, who are you serving?
Yeah.
And if it isn't the folks that are part of that municipality, that's an issue.
Yeah.
And I want to clarify too, before I love hearing about.
Because you're not part of that municipality,
right?
No.
Yeah, no, it's true. But I want to clarify too. I don't think all landlords are bad, and I don't think all tenants are always in the right.
No.
But if you look at some of the discussions on the WTF Carbondale page, and I recognize that's a sliver, a snapshot of that, there are a lot of people who are in tough situations like the ones you're talking about. And those people can't all be in the wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm sorry, there's like this vampiric relationship with the landlords who can continue to do some of the landlords who can continue to do negative things because they're going to have an SIU population that's unfamiliar with their names and come through a community and kind of suck the lifeblood out without putting it back in. When really those tenants are clients. They're customers. They deserve to be heard because it shouldn't have to go to a level where you call the manager. You know what I mean? The city manager to come in and handle things.
It should just be taken care of. This is, we're talking about anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000 to $15,000 in a given year, a major chunk of most people's income being transacted directly to
for one residence. And if you are a person who owns a lot, multiply that. And imagine the money that's going this way without trickling back down to the maintenance of properties. And I can already tell you, I'm hemorrhaging money. Like it's not
what you thought it was going to be.
I'm not lighting cigars with $100 bills, but the reason that I'm spending so much money is we're considering what the client's experience is. It's not what's the cheapest faucet. It's what's the faucet that we're not going to have to come back and fix, and the one that they can count on that's always going to make sure they have water running. What water heater is going to continue to heat their water so that when they have to bathe their children or take a shower and go to work, they have hot water. And I think unfortunately there's an economy of scale where you just can't. You get to a level and you can no longer consider the individual experience. And at that point, I mean, I don't want to out myself as a socialist because I don't think I necessarily describe myself that way. But also, you just shouldn't have more than you can manage in a way that properly supports the community.
Well, in a good, I can't remember if this was an NPR article. I don't remember if it was a Strong Towns piece. I don't remember what I read in recent days, but it was talking about the difference between a familiar relationship between a tenant and a property owner and the relationship between a tenant and a large enterprise that doesn't have a personal relationship.
It's no longer a human.
It is just a mechanism for cash flow. And as soon as that any part of that cash flow component is threatened, then there's just all the less humanity provided to the actual person.
It's a bottom line at that point. It's no longer a personal issue. It's what's the bottom line. The bottom line is money. And if X gets me the most amount of money, if I can get away with not giving back a security deposit when I don't know whether or not, I living here for so long and interacting with so many people, every single person I've talked to about this endeavor has talked to me about a nightmare landlord story where they have had their money taken from them. And it wasn't every landlord, because most people in Carbondale, if you don't own a home, you're going to have several landlords. But if you have 4 landlords and one of them has stolen money from you, and that's like with regularity repeatable number, that's 25%, man. That's already too much. And I think it's a greater number than that at this point, based on the conversations I've had with people like yourself. Not to dig too deep into this, but I mean, I'm a little passionate about it because it's the heart of this town is where the people live. And if the people hate where they live, or they're miserable, or their homes are falling apart, then the town is falling apart, and we can't let that happen.
Well, and the issues that it leads to more broadly, right? We talk about the actuality versus the perception of violent crime in Carbondale, right? And while the perception and the realities may not match, the fact is that there are the lived realities of people catching bullets in a door, people hearing bullets whiz by them, people losing friends and family to gun violence on a regularity. And it's not as if it's not all over this country, right? It's not like it is just simply focused on Carbondale, but there is a solution outside of enforcement by police that helps to solve for these issues, and that is the quality of living conditions that people are able to just have.
Well, let's circle back to education. And talk about the number one factor that you can link high test scores to is property value. And so if we take test scores as even a keyhole measure of a successful education, then all those folks that are in challenging home situations and in poor communities are automatically, and there's not a mechanism to protect them from being in those challenging situations, that not a mechanism to prevent property values from declining, then automatically we're in a system that's too corrupt to protect these people from experiencing substandard education, substandard support in the community, over enforcement of, this is a very deep conversation. It's big, but it all does link back to this thing of like, if people are secure in their homes, right? It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If people have their shelter, if that one need is taken care of, then that's a huge deal. And when it's not taken care of, people don't have a basic need met, then people can't be healthy internally. And when they're not healthy internally, they're going to not do healthy things externally. Yeah, people in those communities are sometimes the folks perpetrating crimes.
Yeah.
We still can't blame those people for being essentially for manifesting what's been put on their plate.
A victim of circumstance. It's a very real thing, right? Like we all live and operate within a system. That system has more influence on us than our own individual actions within the system. That's a very real thing, right? We can all talk about the individual responsibility that we all have, but the reality is, like, if we use a benchmark like pollution, it doesn't matter how many plastic bottles we as individuals work to recycle. The reality is that a large institution that has systemic influence produces those plastic bottles for us to make waste of.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a personal, right? We should all take personal responsibility for that. But you're right. Taking personal responsibility shows that I have a commitment to an issue I believe in, but it's not going to affect change like it will if we attack the source of the problem.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating for eating the rich, although I'm not against it either. But I also think that, that's something we should all consider beyond just, oh, that person did that thing, they are bad.
Yeah.
Maybe, but there's other stuff to look at. So,
how old are your kids now?
My kids are 10 and 7.
What do they think of Carbondale?
Well, that's where Grandma and Papa live. Grandma buys them stuff and Papa takes them fishing. I work really hard when my family's here to make them value it in a way that makes them want to come back. And part of this, too, is like, even though my kids live in Salt Lake City, I'm creating a possible legacy for them at some point.
Yeah.
And part of that legacy is not just there's a business here that can make you money. It's they're going to love Quattro's Pizza. And they're going to have some Mary Lou's biscuits and gravy. And they're going to go, Dad, this isn't as great as the food we had at Harbaugh's, but did you look at the pictures on the wall? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
My goal is to make them, to force them to love this town. And I think they do. They love visits home. They hate sweating so much. My daughter cannot handle humidity. She cannot handle it. My son.
Is Utah dry?
Utah, we're in a desert, man.
Okay.
And like we hike a lot. And our kids aren't really whiny about that. We've made them into hikers, but
when they come here and try and hike.
Dude, we came into town and we're driving down from St. Louis and we saw the brown sign for Cahokia Mounds. And I don't know, maybe a field trip in elementary school, but I can't remember being at Cahokia Mounds ever. So I was like, let's go. And it's a Thursday afternoon and it's about 13 days ago. So we're in the middle of you guys are in the middle of finally it's dried out in terms of precipitation. But now that water's just sitting in the air, the sun's beating down. I take my kids on this giant walk around the Cahokia Mounds, and my daughter, 10-year-old trooper, is red-faced and ready to pass out. So the humidity is not their favorite, but there's a lot they love here. And the wildlife, I hate the desert, man.
I see what you did there again, man.
Ah,
so many good wild jokes.
Branding.
Did you had that throughout the course of your life? Like, Wild doesn't seem like one of those last names people would pick on you with, but would always use in some sort of way to enhance the conversation. Has that always been the case? My sister,
Christy Wild, wonderful nurse in the area, hates the name Wild for the same reason that I am. It's a conversation starter for me. She doesn't like conversations, but for me, it's always been if I get carded for anything or pay with a credit card, they go, "Oh, Wild, huh? Are you a wild guy?"
Yeah.
And, it's dumb and it's cheesy, but it's a conversation starter. And as I said, I'm compulsively social, so I enjoy even when it's like poor dad joke level of that kind of shenanigans. So yeah, I've heard it my whole life, man.
Yeah, I love
And
it.
it's a common enough last name that everywhere you go, somebody will say, do exactly what you did earlier and go like, are you related to Lenny? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'd like to meet him, but no, not at all. Well, and by the way, waiting for you, I was like, I'm sitting down for an interview with Columbo. My in-laws would be so excited that I'm meeting such a famous detective. So I'm sure you've dealt with some of that yourself.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Grew up with it. I mean, it's the life I live, having to always correct from Columbo with an O, or from Columbo with a U to Columbo with all O's.
Yes,
that is my trick. I will seldom have my last name spelled correctly, but that's okay, because the iconic Columbo in the United States is that of Columbo with a U.
But now, because of this conversation, I'll remember, and I'll correct people for you, because I care. And if you're looking for a home, remember, I care.
So I'm really interested in now the video aspect of this, because here's the deal, right? Like I said, this Carbondale concept, right? And this is I hate the phrase bootstrapping, right? Because pulling yourself up by the bootstraps is literally impossible, right?
Right.
That's the joke of it, right? Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Well, turns out that's not how gravity works. Is to lead a development of new industry in this town, and that is media production, digital media, television, radio, what have you.
Sure.
If you look at the town now as it sits, you've got umpteen number of production spaces, from people's homes and basements to what you're in the midst of here. Yeah. Angie Wyatt, one of the former TV anchors for TV3, has taken her television show, The Spiel, and put it into the old water treatment plant over off Grandin Wall.
That's awesome.
We've got an $87 million renovation coming down the pipeline to the communications building at SIU. Right,
I visited the building the other day. I snuck in and walked around. I love that building, and I'm glad to hear it's being renovated.
It's really going to get the works, right? And we're in a position, much like Georgia was 10 or 15 years ago. We've got the state of Illinois being somewhere in the neighborhood of like the 5th most viable media production state in the country, due to access to resources and tax incentives and all that fun stuff. We've got a direct line to the State Tourism Bureau through Carbondale Tourism, because the Tourism Bureau is what handles media production in the state of Illinois. That's kind of one of their institutional functions is liaison with that industry. We've got giant empty mall spaces that could be turned into production studios. We've got a talent mill at SIU to actually produce the talent.
The outdoors here are amazing.
Do what?
The outdoors create the most awesome location filming spaces imaginable.
Within all of the merger of however many geographical zones exist in Southern Illinois, bluffs, prairies, swamplands, rolling hills, all that shebang. It's there. It's accessible. You've got major metropolitan areas: Chicago, St. Louis, Nashville. Things I leave out too often. Indianapolis is just as close as Chicago is.
Yeah.
And so is Chattanooga, give or take. I mean, it's maybe an extra half an hour, 45 minutes than Chicago, but Chattanooga's there too. And the idea that production costs in those locations are exponentially more expensive than production costs in this space, right? So while the concern right now would be, well, how do you provide work for people permanently so that you can get two partners within a relationship to find work here and to settle down and raise a family and not feel like they're pulled one direction or the other. When you've got transient workforces coming through, where it's production crews, a couple months at a time, in and out, cycling through to just utilize the resources here, bringing dollars from outside the economy into the economy, plugging it in, and then just building off of that. But it's got to start somewhere with no resource. And that's kind of why the Carbondale idea is out there, that if we can put ourselves on the map as this place, then we can use it as a stepping stone to bigger industry. And that's where I come into my invite now. Knowing what you and Barry are doing, I would love to have you guys as part of this project as well, and have you be kind of our this old house vertical.
Yeah, I love it. I would love to enter into that conversation. Some of the first screen acting I did was for SIU's studio. You remember what the old SIU show was called, where they did? Was it Studio A Productions or something like that, where they would do sketch comedy?
So Alt News 2642.
No, it was something they did anyway for the local PBS affiliate.
Okay.
But they did wonderful things there, and always the film program had opportunities for folks to get out. I love the idea that there's a drive toward that, because I really do believe there's so much magic in this town to be had, just in terms of locations alone.
Yep.
Not to mention the talent and resources.
Yep.
I think that's just brilliant, man.
Yep.
I love it.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to have wrangled one more person into this whole mix, man. And Barry will have to carry the weight while he's physically here, but I'm sure if I can bribe him with a few bottles of golden elixir, we'll get
that's always a possibility. Yes, absolutely.
I don't know, man. What am I missing on our chat? I know we've had a good run about talking a lot about property and a little bit about Jason, but I don't know. I just I wonder if I'm missing anything that you feel like we gotta talk about in this round. There's always going to be
we can always have a round two. I'll say for a moment, and this is what you touched on yourself. The people make Carbondale, right? And even as folks that I've loved have moved along or what have you, they're always just this core of awesome people. And the cool part about people getting old enough that they maybe age out of being at the bars every night is they find alternate things, like Chad and Jamie at the practice pad, and folks like that are doing really amazing things locally. And one of the things I try to do when I come back is support folks locally.
Yeah.
And I just I think that's a really cool part of what you're doing here. Is it sounds like you highlight folks locally doing amazing things, and I just want to compliment you on doing your part to make sure that, but really, you talk about this idea of how do you support people with regular jobs, and a lot of Salt Lake has a great film industry, but it's all it's like a gig economy, right? When a production comes through, you hop on if you can, and you ride that out. And most of Carbondale, all the folks I know that stick around for a long enough time, really make their dollar as part of a gig economy. And so I just think it's really cool, that idea that not that we couldn't support people long term here with those things, but really the idea that if you create those opportunities, then people that are subsiding on this gig economy that really is Carbondale and Southern Illinois would just have additional gigs.
Well, it fits into the transient lifestyle that has always been a part of Carbondale existence, right? That's the other component to it. You've got a mix of let's say if we could take it from 28% permanent residency to 38% permanent residency, that would change.
Is that the number for Carbondale? 28% permanent residency?
I don't know if that's actually the number.
Come on, mayoral candidate, you got to know this stuff.
I know. Shame on me, right? I don't. After having,
I'm sorry for cutting you off. No. I get the point, though.
No, absolutely no. I think we are in like the 30% for like permanent residency in Carbondale versus, and that's owner occupied housing versus rental property. So that may not be right the exact in terms of people that live here permanently, but in terms of what housing exists that is a more permanent owner occupied setup rather than the more transient component of I can just leave this house.
Absolutely.
This apartment. However, where am I going with this? Use your brain, Nathan. Cycle back to it.
Gig economy is
gig economy. People in and out. The fact that people come to and fro Carbondale, right? All of these things kind of play into that, right? We can meet industry and people where they are, as opposed to having to have some pie in the sky idea about, well, we're going to attract the latest and greatest Silicon Valley type investment in the Silicon Prairie, right? And do this massive transformation of what this place is and whatever else. Like, no, you just got to know what this place already is, right? We're already full of characters. We're already gigging for our meals, right? We're already back and forth as is. We've just got all these components that say, the entertainment and media industry, as it expands, grows, and becomes more accessible, literally just from a cell phone.
Yeah.
Right? That people make millions of dollars a year based off of this one thing, that it becomes something where, you've just built an additional structure into what was already there.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
you've identified,
yes.
not because you've had to force something new onto it, make a complete change. We're just plugging into what's already there.
Yeah, well, and you know what? People in Carbondale are part of this gig economy, not a lot, sometimes out of necessity, but a lot of times because they don't want to go to a 9 to 5 working for somebody else every day. People here are fiercely and wildly independent. I did it again. And providing opportunities for folks to still maintain that independence, which is what makes Carbondale such a resilient, wonderful place, is what's going to continue to maintain its greatness.
That is it right there. Just enough time for me to edit out that one little clip, hit that hour mark for episode 72 of the WTF Carbondale podcast with Jason Wild, where we indeed wild out this podcast.
Branding!
Have a good one, folks. Whatever that one may be.
Thank you.